Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning for all the audience and panelists. It is a great day today to discuss and debate about the test of evasion. So, before we start our forum today, I would like to explain what the real test means. Taxation is a term for when a taxing authority, usually a government, levies or imposes a financial obligation on its citizens or residents. Paying taxes to governments or officials has been a mainstay of civilization since ancient times. The term taxation applies to all types of involuntary levies, from income to capital gains to estate taxes. Though taxation can be a noun or verb, it is usually referred to as an act. The resulting revenue is usually called taxes. So today, our beautiful and good-looking panelists that can share an information between us are invited, including me. Young batchmaker, I am Hasha Amali Binti Hasbullah. I studies at Polytechnic Kota Baru. There are Ms. Nurul and Christina Binti Ahmad from Custom Officers. On her left side, there is Ms. Aisha binti Muhammad Nasir. She is one of the highest taxpayers, or better known as a CIS representative in Malaysia. Meanwhile, on her right side is Ms. Anisha Sarah binti Yusuf, a lecturer from University of Malaysia Kelantan and one of the taxpayers as well. Then the last panel is Ms. Wanurunisan binti Wan Muhammad Samani from LHDN or Lembaga Hasil Dalam Negeri. Nowadays, some people in Malaysia want to avoid paying taxes, but they do not know that the problem of tax evasion is illegal in Malaysia. For further detail about this topic, I would like to seek an information from the first panel next to me, Ms. Nurul and Christina Binti Ahmad. Can you tell us what is tax evasion means?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Mrs. Asa Amalin. Assalamualaikum, a very good morning. I bid to all of you. Tax evasion is an illegal attempt to defend the impossible of taxes by individual, corporation, trust, and other. Tax evasion often instead the deliberate misrepresentation of the taxpayer effect to the tax authorities to reduce the taxpayer's tax ability, and it includes the dishonest tax reporting, such as declaring less income, profit, or gain than the amount actually earned or overstating deduction. The tax evasion is an activity commonly associated with the informal economy. One measure of the extent of the tax evasion is the tax gap, is the amount of unreported income, which is different between the amount of income that should be reported to the tax authorities and the actual amount reported. In contrast, the tax evidence is the legal use of the tax law to reduce one of the tax burdens. Both the tax evasion and tax avoidance can be viewed as a form of the tax non-compliance, as they describe a range of activity that instead a several tax system, but just clarification of the tax avoidance is deportation avoidance is lawful, it's self-correcting system. Tax evasion and the tax avoidance can be both practiced by corporation, class, and individual.
Well, we have heard the true meaning of tax evasion explained by Ms. Anne Christina just now, and I hope the attendees can understand what has been explained. Then, I would like to ask Ms. Nurul Nisrin, does tax have an assumption? If the tax has an assumption, can you explain to us all types of assumption?
First and foremost, I would like to thank organizer for inviting me to deliver some benefit information on our forum today. A very good morning also to Ms. Hasha Amalin, panelists, and my beloved audience. The question that was asked to me earlier was whether the tax had an exemption. My answer is yes. Tax have exemption, and there are a number of circumstances that could result in tax being waived. First is retirement benefits. Retirement benefits received by employee at retirement are fully exempted from tax if the Director General is satisfied that his retirement from employee is due to ill health. Second, The retirement occurs on or after a person reaches the age of 55 of reach the mandatory retirement age from employment and has served consecutively for 10 years with the same employer or with a company in the same group. Third, the retirement occurs upon reaching the mandatory retirement age under a contract of employment or collective agreement at the age of 50 but before the age of 55 and has served for 10 years with the same employer or with a company in the same group.
Sorry for interrupting. I want to ask you a question. Along with the obvious problem of underfunding of the government, tax evasion raised fundamental question about the fairness of the tax system. So how can buyers differentiate tax evasion can be deliberate or invented, and is distinct from tax avoidance?
Okay, deliberate aversion occurring, for example, individuals do not report income or do not pay tax, but unintentionally, mistake made in filing tax return can also give rise to inadvertent tax evasion. Illegal tax evasion is distinct from tax avoidance, which is taking advantage of legal ways to reduce tax liability, such as using the mortgage interest deduction. However, due to ambiguities in the law, different in interpretation, the creation of new circumstances, and other factors, there can be some gray area where is it difficult to distinguish between avoidance and evasion.
However, what are our responsibility as taxpayers? Have we reported our income to honestly, or are we trying to manipulate data to avoid paying taxes?
Okay, this based on the study by HR 2007, who say fraud is a tax reporting is common. As an example, what is the most interesting is the result of the survey conducted by Blake Eilish in 2011 in America. In March 2011, fraud is the this tax fraudsters belong to the group of single men under the age of 45 years. The result of this survey proves the fraud is the income tax does not come to the poor or rich, but this state from that individual who cheat the tax generally have the same level of income as individual who does not cheat. We don't have that time, ability, and skill to build our own road and bridge. So by the paying tax, we can help the government prove the facility for all. Tax evasion should not be allowed because those who do not pay this tax actually lie by their generously and honestly in incoming reporting. They are said to receive the same facility and benefit despite not paying tax. Every often in the tax evasion is usually subjected to criminal charge by heavy penalty.
Great point, Ms. Christina. Apart from that, taxes are one of the ways to finance government spending and it has become an important component of government revenue. The share of taxes in total revenue and the amount of tax collected varies between countries and it depends on the economic structure of each country. In Malaysia, the share of total government tax revenue is relatively high. So, are there different and relatively high tax evasion rates for income taxes?
In 2008 until 2010, the individual income tax accounted for about 72% of evasion, but only about 44% of tax paid. In contrast, payroll tax, which are the second largest source of government revenue in the United States, have a much lower evasion rate. Payroll tax is paid on the wages and salary of employee and used to finance social insurance programs such as Social Security and Medicare, and self-employment tax accounted for about 19% of evasion, but 39% of tax paid. The corporate tax evasion ratio was relatively low compared to income tax since corporate tax accounted for both about 9% of evaded tax and 9% of actual revenue.
As far as I know, tax evasion, particularly in developing countries, is a debatable issue. Aversion is a disease and needs to minimize so that black economy or hidden economy can be mitigated. If the taxation system cannot perform appropriate policies to collect tax, many people will use this opportunity to avoid paying tax. Thus, tax evasion will be popular. Tax evasion happens because of many reasons. For example, people just try to avoid declaring their wealth. They simply do not want to pay tax or they prefer to save their money for own use. In the presence of tax evasions, the government cannot allocate revenue for programs and cannot provide desirable social service. Understanding why tax evasions happen and known factors that cause tax evasion is very important for decreasing tax evasion. So my question is, what is the standard measure of tax evasion?
Okay, good question, Mr. Anis. The standard measure of the tax evasion is the tax gap. The tax gap is a amount of the taxes that are owed by the not paid in a timely or voluntary manner. The Internal Revenue Service collect information on the size and composition of the tax gap by conducting period study that draw on the number of sources. For the major company of the tax gap and reporting of individual income taxes, the IRS collect information each year from examination of a random sample of taxpayers. The most recent the tax cap report was published in 2016 of the tax years to 2008 until 2010. The net tax cap, which account for the late payment made either voluntary as a result information average 406 billion per year from 2008 until 2010. About 90% of the tax went unpaid. This was an equivalent to 2.8% for annual gross domestic product and 80% of annual deferred revenue during that period. If the tax gap stay constant relative to GDP since then, it will be reached 560 billion by 2018. If it stay constant relative to the tax revenue, it would be have reached about 600 billion. For perspective, the federal budget deficit in 2018 was 779 billion. So the tax gap could be published by being 17 and 80% as large as interest budget deficit in 2018.
So, thank you, Miss Christina, for your explanation. Then, Miss Anis, can I ask your opinion?
Of course, Ms. Ansha.
Okay, tax evasion occurs when a person or business illegally evades paying their tax liability, which is a criminal charge subject to penalties and fines. What will happen to taxpayer who commit tax evasion?
If I'm not mistaken, failure to pay proper tax can lead to criminal charge. To impose a charge, it must be determined that tax evasion is deliberate act by ex-taxpayer. Not only can a person be liable for the payment of any unpaid taxes, but they can also be found guilty on official charge and may be required to serve a prison sentence. According to the IRS, penalties include imprisonment of no more than 5 years, fines of no more than 205,000 for individuals or 500,000 for companies, or both, along with prosecution costs.
Yes, I think it is true and exactly what Ms. Annie said just now. Anyone who found guilty of engaging in willful tax evasion will be fined not more than 5 years in prison or pay as much as 250,000 for individuals and 500,000 for companies or may be charged both at once. Now, when we know Ms. Ansha's opinion, why the tax evasion rate may be higher for high-income households than for middle-income households.
Admittedly, some times ago, find that household in the top income decile accounted for 61% of tax evasion, but just 44% of earned income a ratio of about 1:1, the evasion rate was even higher for those at the very top of the income distribution. Those in the top 1% accounted for 28% of tax evasion, but 80% of income. A ratio of about 1:55:1, the bottom half of the income distribution accounted for just 12% of evasion and 40% of income, a ratio of less than 1. Although the information is Although the information is dead, it's likely to still be the case the evasion rates are higher among high income householders since income from capital, especially self-employment or pastoral business, so proprietorship partnership, has increased over time and is both highly concentrated among high income households and associated with high evasion rates.
Sorry to interrupt. There's something I'm still not sure about. Although the sound of tax avoidance and tax evasion sound similar, but are very different. Tax avoidance reduces your tax bills by structuring your transaction so that you get the biggest tax benefits. Tax avoidance is completely legal and very wise. Tax evasion, on the other hand, is an attempt to reduce your tax liability by fraud, deception, or concealment. Tax evasion is a crime. Business owners often find themselves subject to more scrutiny than wage earners with similar income levels. Why? Because business owners have more options to avoid taxes both legally and illegally. So, can the two representatives state some example of the most common criminal activity that violates tax law?
Sure, of course. Some of the most common criminal activities that violate tax law are intentionally underreporting or leaving out income. The point is that hiding income is the category of fraud. Examples include the failure of a business owner to report part of the they receive, or the landlord failing to report rent payment. Second, keeping two sets of books and making false entry in books and record. Engaging in accounting irregularities such as business failure to keep adequate record, or a discrepancy between amount reported on a corporation return and amount reported on its financial statement, generally demonstrate fraudulent intent. For example, an Ohio businessman was sentenced to 6 months in prison, 6 months of home detention, and 2 years supervised release for attempting to evade nearly 170,000 in income tax. He received income in the form of wages, non-salary payments, and corporate payments for his personal expenses. The personal expenses included property tax and utility payment for his personal residence, as well as payment for a new furnace, air conditioner, air cleaner, and humidifier, a down payment and loan payment for his daughter's car, payment of his wife's automobile insurance, and car repair bill, college tuition payment for his nephew, and as well as other personal expenses payment.
Other than that, claiming a fast or overstated deduction on a return. Insurance was claiming substantial multiple deduction to overstating travel expenses. It can also include paying your children a spoon to work that they did not perform. The IRS is always vigilant when it comes to inflate deduction from the pass-through entities. Net is claiming personal expenses as business expenses. This is an easy trap to fall into because often assets such as car or computer we have both business personal use. Proper record keeping will go along in preventing a finding of tax fraud. For example, the sole proprietor of plumbing shop was sentenced to 30 months in prison, 3 years of supervised release of the tax evasion, and ordered to pay approximately 1,030 in restitution to the IRS. The business owner, will fully attempt to avoid paying his Faraday's income tax by scamming gross receipts of his plumbing business and paying personal expenses from his business account and claim them as a business expenses.
Now, we all know that tax evasion is a criminal behavior in Malaysia and can be punished for anyone involved in this tax evasion activity. Therefore, stop making any tax evasion and pay taxes with the proper payment because with this tax payment, the government can provide facilities to provide comfort to the people. Well, I think that's all from us. Thank you for lending your ears in our discussion and thank you.